So when it comes to writing really compelling dialogue, it is important to find the right balance between the dialogue and also the description parts of your screenplay. What that also means is that the dialogue has to have a purpose, because in general, when it comes to filmmaking, because it's a visual art form, the mantra is show, don't tell. So whenever you can avoid dialogue, it's always better to choose a visual way to tell the story, or almost always. But there are very good reasons for dialogue in general out there. And I hope this is reacting now. Hello. Oh, it is. Okay, so there are some good reasons for dialogue. And one of them is to give basic information the audience needs to understand a story and the characters. So this is exposition, and exposition, it can be tricky and can be very boring if it's done not very well. So when this is done, it has to be crafted very carefully. So any kind of information that the audience needs so that they will get the answer, anything that can't be told through visuals alone or not powerfully enough, can be supported through a dialogue. But it is a tricky thing to do that really, really well. And I will go into how to do that later. But for now, I just want to say when a dialogue is a good idea to choose. The dialogue can also help to move the story forward, in particular when there is, for example, a conflict situation in the film and the conflict explodes, and afterwards the characters will do something they would not have done before the situation happened. So this will push the story in a new direction that was probably unforeseeable. And the dialogue helps with that because it exposes something about the characters that wasn't clear before what was said. The dialogue can also help to introduce characters, ideally not in a way like, "Hi, I'm Bill. What is your name? My name is Anne." That's a bit clumsy and a bit boring. It can be, if it's woven in really carefully, it can work though. But usually it should be in a more elegant way, the way the names are introduced, like, Ralph, can you hand me this and that, for example? Then we know this is Ralph, for example. Of course, names can be introduced visually as well with name tags, for example, or if you can read the name somewhere else on the letterbox. So there are different ways how you can introduce characters, but dialogue is one way to do it. It also clarifies the character's function. So why it is in this story at all? What is the purpose of the character in the story? How does it help the whole story? What relationships are there in this story? Then the dialogue is also helpful to develop the characters more throughout the story. Maybe they learn something about themselves, they learn something about a situation. Maybe someone learns that they were cheated on and they realize that they have been in a relationship for too long. And through this dialogue, they can move in a new direction. The dialogue also helps to represent the viewpoint of the characters, and it can reveal the character's individual sound, because of course every person sounds different. Everybody has a different rhythm. We speak on different pitches, but also we have different accents, dialects. We use specific words particularly often. Some people don't finish sentences. Some people don't even finish words. Those things can be written into the dialogue, and they distinguish the characters from each other and help the dialogue to be more natural. Just be careful with with dialects and heavy accents, because it can become too tricky to be readable in the end. So it's very important that you just indicate the dialect and choose the things that are particular for that person that you're writing into the dialogue. And then we will still know when somebody else is reading it, that this is only for that character. Only this character speaks in this particular way. The dialogue can also show the different ways the characters try to get what they want, because usually characters want something, or they want to defend something that they already have. Through the dialogue, they can negotiate that very, very well. And of course, dialogue also offers the opportunity to actors to say something cool or unexpected, but don't push yourself in this way. You don't always have to create these incredible singers in every single screenplay. Some have them, some don't have them, but it doesn't necessarily always improve the quality. I mean, they become more memorable very often, these lines, but you don't need to push yourself. It's an opportunity. See it as that. And actually all of these are opportunities. It's not a rule in this way, I think, but this is how you can use dialogue for your story and for your characters. What I would suggest to you to get a better understanding of dialogue and how the masters do it, choose 3, maybe 4 scenes, your favorite scenes of all time, and analyze them, watch them, analyze them. Some of you have done that probably before anyway, but the way I wanted to look at it is, how is this dialogue used as a back and forth battle between characters to either get what they want or defend what they already have? So how are they speaking? How are they negotiating? How are they probably manipulating each other? How are they not say what they actually want, but try it in another way? Think of like how women and men sometimes speak, but the reason why they don't understand each other, because they speak like this, you know, like they're not really speaking with each other. They're not clear enough. So like he says, are you okay? Yes, I'm okay, the woman says. And then he thinks she's okay, but she thinks, well, you should know already. I mean, you should know that I'm not okay, but she doesn't say that. So, but we go into that subject a bit deeper anyway as well. But just watch that, look out for that, take notes probably on the way. If you find something that is specifically great, something you think, wow, I wish I had written that, and that can inspire you on the long run. Also look at how a scene gets turned on one or maybe more particular lines within the scene. If there's something there's a turning point, there's a hook probably even, but it's on the line because someone is saying something very specific and that changes the atmosphere in the scene. The tone goes in a different direction. Suddenly the whole emotional outburst breaks down. If someone was screaming, for example, and somebody says something and this person breaks down entirely into tears, that is, for example, but it's because someone said something specifically. What can that be? What does that? Then of course, if there is in your favorite film scenes an exceptionally memorable line of dialogue, then that's also something to watch out for. It can be something good. So that's why I included it, because sometimes you come up with something like that and you're not sure if you can put it in. Usually you can put it in, but you don't need to push it. And also look out for lines that express a perspective that resonates with you, because I guess if it's one of your favorite film scenes of all time, then it is because it has something to do with you. It resonates in a way with you, with something that you believe in, or maybe not believe in, or it's quite the opposite, or but it addresses something. And then also just notice it for yourself. At the end of my talk, I will share this link with you so that you can watch that scene, and I will share with you once again this slide so that you can look at it on the side and just have a look at this scene, because I think this scene can work pretty well if it speaks to you, because of course it's a very subjective thing, what people like and what they don't like, what they find good or not find good. But I will share that with you so that you get the chance to look at it through these eyes. In order to write dialogue you will be proud of, there are things you absolutely need to avoid. And I think the most obvious one is that the characters should never say exactly what is on their mind, unless it is a film about someone who can't lie, or who just has to say always the blunt truth. Otherwise, people just don't do that. And also, characters should not be on the nose vulnerable. Of course, when there is a situation in a film and finally this person can cry, then it's okay. There's a place for this vulnerability. But if someone is never stopping to whine and stuff, and to always, but not in a funny way, or in a very specific way, because it's still a protection shield, then it doesn't work. That's not how people are. People don't show their vulnerability. They will do everything to not show that vulnerability and that's why there must be some kind of protection shield. And when the vulnerability flickers through, that's what makes the dialogue and the scene really, really strong. Of course, they can, I mean, if it's a scene that somebody has lost somebody, and there comes a point that they will address that and say it in a way that they are sad, it can come, but it needs the build up towards that. It can't just happen right away. People are usually not like that, but I don't want to exclude the possibility that some people are really like that. But then this is a specific character, and that needs to be developed in that way and established in that way. But this is more like generally speaking. Then also never let them say the one sentence that epitomizes what the character thinks, feels, wants, and desires in that scene. But if they have to, because that can happen, then it must be really the hardest thing ever for them, ever. Or they can at least say it very sarcastically. Tom Hanks's character in Sleepless in Seattle, I don't know if you know the film, it was from the beginning or mid-90s, a film. He lost his wife, he has a son, and at night, because he can't sleep, he calls in to a radio station just to talk, basically, and he starts to talk about what happened. And while you can hear his sadness, he's not whinging about what happened. And there is a moment where he talks about Christmas, and in this scene he talks about the son and how his wife did do Christmas, and that the son is probably sad. But what he never addresses, and what this scene is really about, that he is the one who is missing his wife incredibly, and he can't bear the thought really of next Christmas without her. And so he never says it, but everybody knows that what he's really talking about, and that makes this scene so moving and so powerful. And that is what you should try to, so when you know exactly what the scene is about, then avoid that this character is saying word by word what it is about. There's an alternative to that, so that if they really have to say it, or you need somebody to say it, if there's a villain anywhere near your character, they can say it, and you can use it as their weapon against the main character, or the character that is in that scene, and you want to avoid that character to say those words. This is very, very powerful and very hurting sometimes as well. And as I'm saying that, villains are also great to address the theme of the film in their lines. It never the main character should say, or never, they can, but they should not. Most of the times. There are always exceptions, and that's what I want to emphasize really. I say more generalized rules, but I will always also try to say some relative examples whenever I can, because not always the rules are 100%. And as you all know, you have to know the rules so that you can break them wisely in a very unique way. Another thing for really great screenwriting, dialogue writing, is to use metaphors. For example, if you say something, he went through baptism of fire, that's a very strong picture that we get in our minds, and we know exactly what that means for the character, especially in the context of the story. And similes are also great. And there's another Tom Hanks film, Forrest Gump, where he used life is like a box of chocolates, you never know what you're gonna get. This is such a beautiful simile used, and if you can use something like that, it will stick. It will stick. And that these are the things that become the quotes you can find on the internet everywhere, and will be repeated probably in other films in reference to that film. The third one, and a really crucial one, is subtext. And subtext is really difficult. It's a skill that needs work and a lot of dedication, but subtext is one of the most important things for writing really fantastic dialogue, because when you understand subtext, the lines that you write will be much stronger and more subtle very often, and you can transport so much more about the story when the subtext is powerful, because characters are defined as much by what they don't say as by what they say, because people keep secrets from each other, and also of course from themselves, because sometimes they, or not so much only from themselves, but they sometimes suppress the truth, the feeling of truth. Often we don't want to know the truth. And that is when people, or most people, speak most of the time not exactly what they're thinking. If we did so, we would be constantly in trouble, I guess, because if we really spoke the way what we are hearing inside, or what we are thinking, that would be probably quite rude a lot of times, or just too hard to chew for your opposite. So we have learned over time to reformulate our thoughts into something that feels more right to say. But also sometimes we hide, we say white lies to protect the other person or to protect ourselves, or because we can't say the truth, it feels too much, or we don't want to say the truth. We're not in, the other person doesn't deserve the truth probably. So we're more or less talking subtext most of the time as human beings. And the tricky part is because more for beginners when it comes to dialogue writing, start with a little too direct speech, in the sense of that they write too much what is really on a character's mind, what is too much what they want to say, but they don't really want to say. And to create really fantastic subtext is something that will make your character so much richer and deeper, and it will tell so much more about the characters and also about the story when you're able to do this really well. What is really important about subtext as well is that you need to, for every scene, you need to understand what the character is really meaning. You must know what is going on underneath, emotionally and intellectually, because when you know that, it will be much easier for you to write the subtext. And then you can imply on that something is not exactly as it seems on the surface. You can suggest things by using images or actions or particular phrasings that will support these implications. Yeah, learning to write scenes where you dance around the truth can be one of the most powerful things a writer can do. And this is, I think, one of really the most important thing when it comes to writing compelling dialogue, because this what makes it so natural and so human as well. A good contrast would be a character like Data from Star Trek, who is an android and who tends to always speak the truth, and that's why he's sometimes hurtful. And that's what I mean with when you write a character who is that way, then you establish it in this way, and that's when you break basically the rules, but it is because of the character where you write it different, so that the Data might not have very much subtext. For example, I don't know if you know him. It's the Next Generation series of Star Trek from the 90s, and there were a few films where he also appeared, and I think he appeared in Picard as well. So now we're going into the real action part, and this was enough theory for now, and I will discuss my own approach to dialogue writing, and maybe you can draw some inspiration from that. And yeah, you're very welcome to ask all the questions afterwards as well, of course. A lot of times I'm asked when to start with dialogue writing, because of course oftentimes it's suggested to just first work on the characters, on the outline, on the treatment. Yes, I agree with that in general. But when the dialogue crosses your mind, it's time to write it down as it is at this point. You don't need to write the whole screenplay around it at this point, but make sure you write it down and don't lose it, because it came as it at this time to you, and that's precious. So make sure that you keep it somewhere. And a suggestion for that is I have a creativity journal. You can have, mine's a physical notebook journal that I'm using, but you can have it on your computer, on your phone, probably even. The thing is that you have something where you store that kind of inspiration and those ideas. And what I would suggest to put in there is any compelling or cool or moving dialogue from films or plays or books or magazines, or probably even from any old YouTube video that you stumble over. Write it down there and make sure that you keep it as an inspiration somewhere. A second fantastic source is eavesdropping. I know it's not very polite, but it's such a fantastic source, because of course people deliver the best lines very often, and you can do that when it's possible again for you to go on public transport, for example. Outrageous dialogues I have found there. Absolutely brilliant, really. Write that down. You can't make things up like that. Of course, coffee places, wherever you go in general, have something to write with you. Maybe, I mean, sometimes I just write those things down on my phone, of course, because sometimes I forget that journal, but I will try to carry it with me most of the times. And I will add it later when I have just written it on the phone. And of course, when you come up with any great lines or even chunks of dialogue, then put it into that creative journal. It will grow as you go, and it will be a great source for when you lacking ideas or need some inspiration. It's such a fantastic tool to use that. And the photo is not my inspiration journey, but journal, but in a sense, I do things like that. It's not that it's not chaotic, but it's not as full, my pages, but I also stick pictures and stuff in there. So if that is also helping you, it's a bit off topic, but if that helps you with your inspiration, you can use that as well in that tool. Then the next step for me is when it really comes to dialogue writing is actually, I'm not writing it first, I'm actually first saying it, I'm acting it out. And that has a lot to do with my own acting background. And I draw quite some of my exercises from my acting training. And one is when I have developed the characters, then and I am working now on the dialogue, that I go for a walk with the characters and I speak as them, whatever comes out. So I'm not yet, I haven't written anything, no dialogue is usually written, but I speak as they are. If I feel a bit uncomfortable about that, speaking just to myself, and if there are other people around, I will do that into the phone, which is great anyway, because then I can record it. And then I can transcribe it later and see what I can do with that. Because usually when I speak like that, I will speak like a human being and not like someone who's trying to create fantastic lines. And as I have recorded, I can transcribe it word by word. You could use softwares for that, of course. I don't really do that. I like to transcribe everything myself when it's just these little chunks of things, because it's not that I'm going for 3 hours of a walk and have then almost the whole screenplay talked on my phone. So it's not that much, and it's easy to transcribe that. And I also like to see which parts I can already erase, because they're just fillers. And fillers are rarely that useful in a dialogue and should be avoided. When you write dialogue, you polish it in a way that things that are probably human beings are saying to each other, but they use a lot of fillers, but in a film that would just drag the scene to no end. So you would remove everything that is not very useful for the scene. If I can't go outside, but I can only do that when nobody is anywhere near me, to be honest, at this stage, because it's too much experimenting and I don't like the distraction of other people, then that I actually act out the scenes, and I will also record it on the phone or sometimes even on the computer. And I do the same. I transcribe those dialogues, and usually most of that goes into even the final draft with some adjustments, but these parts are usually very workable. I also write some dialogue just on the desk on my computer. I don't always need that movement, but walking is incredibly helpful in general, I think, for the creative work, because it gets your juices flowing. And I think this is not hocus pocus. I even learn my lines as an actor while walking. I can't learn any lines while sitting down. That's not possible. My brain will not take it. So I have to walk. And so that's why I believe very much in walking, but not everybody is like me. So maybe it's an inspiration for you. And if not, forget it. So the second exercise or the second approach that I'm taking when I have written a scene, I will test it first before I show it to anybody else. I will first test it by reading it and also recording it again. And as I'm reading it out loudly, I will already get a sense of what's working, what's really a bit and what will need work, but I keep going. So I will try to not judge myself too much. I will just notice it. So I won't stop it myself. I won't change anything about as I'm going, because I need this flow to go through this part of the dialogue or maybe the whole scene, so that I have a feeling, does it work, does it not work? And then I will go back and listen to it and analyze it, usually on the next day, because I get some distance from it. That's very helpful to do it in this way. I like a little bit of distance, and one day is usually enough because a lot of things are happening in life, so I get enough distance in one day. So yeah, that is tremendous. But that's something I do a bit later, when I have worked through it a few times and have rewritten the dialogue, and I'm now still unsure about the dialogue. I will ask some of my actor friends, and if you have some or someone who can do that for you, that other people, and ideally they are professional actors, because that will make it will help you quite a lot if you have professional actors, because they know how to work with such a text. And people who are not familiar with dialogues will probably have more problems with that. That's why I recommend actors or professional actors for that. But anyone who can help you with that and reads it is definitely beneficial. So I also let them read it, and then I record it. I will try to listen as objectively as possible, which is hard, because as soon as somebody else is reading the lines and it sounds so different from the way I imagined it, then I start to think already, oh, I did it wrong, or she can't or he can't do it in the way that I wanted. This is the wrong person. Yes, probably it's the right person, wrong person, because I didn't cast them for the role yet, or maybe never. But that's not the point at this stage. It's not about them delivering in the lines in the way you want it to be. It's about, do the lines work in general? Maybe you can get feedback from them. How did they feel about speaking them? Did they think this was natural, or was it very artificial, what they had to read? You can even discuss it with them. Actors are fantastic when it comes to refining dialogue, and I will always work with the actors on the very final dialogues and polish it with them together. And I also allow changes on set, as long as they make sense within the story. But I really love this collaboration, and it improves the dialogue so much. So whenever you can get in touch with actors to improve the dialogue, then do it. It's a fantastic thing. If you're an actor yourself, you can do a lot yourself, but it's great to have somebody else, because they will see it differently, they will approach it differently, and so you will get so much more information through that. And finally, that's something I will always recommend, is read, and I think it's a given in a way, but to read as many great screenplays you can get hold of, and look at the dialogue and what makes the dialogue so great. How is it written? How is the balance between dialogue and description? Where is the subtext in the dialogue? Look at that and get the more you read that and the more you get an understanding of it, the more it will be easier for you to develop something like that yourself. So look out for what makes that dialogue so great. What is it about the voices? How are the characters distinguished from each other? Why do you love this scene so much? I think this is a very good one in general. Okay, I had to put this in because I'm Austrian, but I can't do a Styrian accent. Sorry.